What's up, everyone? It's Ben here, and welcome back to Rare Liquid Careers, where my goal is to help you build your ideal career. And if you have watched some of my previous videos already, then you probably know that I'm currently pursuing a master's in international studies and an MBA at Wharton/the University of Pennsylvania. And over this past July, I spent a lot of time meeting up with different Wharton alumni as part of my immersion program. And today I wanted to share with all of you the key leadership lessons and takeaways I got from those conversations. A few really quick things before getting started. First, if you're interested in pursuing an MBA yourself, I'm building out a how to get into MBA course and giving huge discounts to people who sign up early. Feel free to sign up using my links down in the description below. And second, shout out to our sponsor for today's video, Wall Street Prep, a great resource for those interested in a career in finance. I'll talk about them a little bit later. The first company visit actually entailed two companies, which were TVing and Studio Dragon, who you can think of as the Netflix and Paramount of Korea. The first lesson that I want to share is that you can learn from everyone, and it doesn't matter what your position is, whether you're something like an analyst in an entry-level position or if you're the CEO. And to provide a little bit of context as to why this was my takeaway, to give you guys some background as to what these company visits were like. So it was me and my classmates. We would sit down in some kind of conference room, and the CEO would give a presentation about his or her company, and then we would ask some questions that we were just curious about. But this CEO was the only one who really saved some time actually to ask questions to us. So me and my classmates. And obviously we're much younger and we don't have as much experience, but he wanted to learn more about what we thought about the whole streaming industry, how many streaming services we signed up for, and what we thought about just kind of the entertainment space overall. And I thought it was pretty interesting that he did that because none of the other CEOs that we visited kind of saved time to ask us questions. Now, I don't know exactly how helpful our answers were to his questions, but I've always kind of thought that a mark of a good leader is just open-mindedness to other people's opinions, right? Because if you're a leader, and especially if you're a CEO, I think you can be surrounded by people who kind of support what you think all the time. And so it's easy to kind of fall into a trap where you feel like your opinions may be the best, or you may not need to hear other people's opinions. And this is especially true for people who are kind of more at entry-level positions. But I've always really admired people who have been kind of not only, or one thing is to kind of draw out opinions from people at all different types of levels, but also to draw out opinions from people who are maybe a little bit more quiet, introverted, may not be speaking up as much. So that's kind of a bit more of a tangent, but that was the key takeaway that I got from this interaction with the CEO at TVing. The second company we visited was LG U+, which is one of the top phone carriers in Korea. So you can think of it as the T-Mobile or Verizon of Korea. For this meeting, we didn't actually meet with the CEO of the whole company, but instead the CEO of the largest division in the company that was in charge of like billions of dollars of revenue. And the key lesson that I took away from this discussion was to relentlessly innovate. There were a ton of different strategic initiatives that the CEO discussed that he implemented in his first few years. But the first one I want to mention is that LG U+ was the first phone carrier company to add streaming services like Netflix as part of its packaged services. And then second, the company actually bought a small building in Gangnam, which is one of the most expensive areas in all of South Korea. And there's like 5 floors to it. And we actually visited that building. And it has a lot of different kind of like cultural, interesting museum type items in there. And it kind of is like a hub for LG U+, where there is minimal branding about LG U+, but it's something that customers can just go into and kind of enjoy the experience, buy certain products that are not even LG U+ related. But it was just a good way to kind of expand the company's brand. As you can tell, these innovations aren't necessarily world-changing like Apple's iPhone was or any kind of huge innovation like that. But I thought this was a really key/important lesson for, as a leader, no matter what field you're in, whether you're in arts, politics, or business, you can always take a step back to look at how things are done and make changes that in the long run will actually add a lot of value to whatever organization you're kind of a part of or leading. I hope you're enjoying all the leadership lessons so far, and I wanted to kind of briefly interrupt by letting you guys know, in case you're an undergrad student or an MBA student interested in a career in finance, wanted to let you guys know about a really great resource called Wall Street Prep. Wall Street Prep has been around since 2004, and they train interns, new analysts, and employees at all of the top banks in the world. And they recently actually reached out to me as a Wharton MBA student to give me access to their courses as well. They offer a ton of different courses that can help you be prepared for pretty much any investment banking interview, but the two I particularly recommend are the accounting course if you don't have any prior accounting knowledge, and then the premium modeling package, which goes over all the key valuation concepts I learned in banking, like DCFs, comps, accretion dilution, and LBOs. To give you some further reassurance, Andrew was in the same analyst class with me at JP Morgan when I used to work there, and he's now working at Wall Street Prep, which speaks a lot to me about how much they care about talent. If this all sounds interesting to you, highly recommend Wall Street Prep, and make sure to use my code rareliquid in order to get 20% off of any course. I'll leave a link to all of this down in my description below. Going back to our leadership lessons, the next company we visited was Influential, which is a book publishing company that also is building out an audiobook service similar to Audible. From our discussions with Influential CEO, the third lesson I want to share with all of you is to understand what kind of career stress you're comfortable with. To expand on this a little bit, the CEO mentioned that when he was working in the corporate world from his 20s to his late 30s, a lot of the stress that he encountered in his job was relationship stress. So managing the people below him, managing the people upwards above him, that was where a lot of his stress was coming from, because the work itself wasn't necessarily easy per se, but it would eventually get done, right? And then as the CEO and founder of his company, because he was more of an entrepreneur, or because he is an entrepreneur, the stress was more about survival stress. So how is he going to make enough money to make investors happy in order to pay himself and support his family? And also, just with so much competition in the business world, how is the business just overall going to survive, right? So that was the kind of stress that he was dealing with as an entrepreneur and still is. But in a way, it's a little bit invigorating and exciting because there's some uncertainty, but he's more, at least for him, he was more okay with dealing with the stress and the challenge of surviving and kind of growing the business versus constantly stressing out about the politics in an organization and on all the relationship stress that he used to deal with. So this wasn't necessarily exactly specific leadership advice, kind of more general career advice, but I do think that it's very important as a leader to think about what you enjoy, what kind of environments you thrive in, because the more that you put yourself in a position where you can do well in a particular environment, the more effective that you'll be as a leader and the happier you'll be, honestly. So for example, if you're the CEO of a major company, but you get dropped off in a war zone, it doesn't necessarily mean just because you know how to operate a company that you should be the general or lieutenant that leads a bunch of troops in a war, right? And so kind of thinking about it in that way, for you, when you're thinking about your career, eventually you want to build yourself up to some kind of leadership position, right? And so you want to think about, for your career, what kind of stresses you're okay with. Maybe you are fine with relationship stress because you're just really good with people. That's the kind of thing you enjoy and you want to be put in that kind of environment. Or maybe you're a bit more entrepreneurial. And I can tell you, as someone who has founded 2 companies over the past 4 or 5 years, one of the great things is that you don't have to worry that much about relationship stress as compared to like survivor stress, for example, because when you're starting your own company, you can kind of pick and choose who you get to work with, right? And there is obviously a lot more other types of relationship stress where you have to think about how to give feedback, how to keep people motivated and all that stuff. But I do think for when you're starting a company, survivorship or survival stress, I think it's kind of a bigger thing. And so basically, that's kind of a long-winded way for me to say, think about what kind of stress you're okay with in terms of your career and as a leader, and that'll really help you in your future career. The next company was Hanatour, which is a company that sells packaged travel tours, and it's the largest of its kind in Korea. They're actually co-CEOs for this company, and the one we spoke with was female, the only female CEO that we had for our company visits. And the key lesson that we had I had from this conversation was to play to your strengths and be okay with having your weaknesses just be at par level. The CEO had a long career in consulting before she became the CEO at Hanatour, and she kind of talked about how when she first entered into her position, she didn't know how to code, she didn't know how to design a website or a mobile app, and there were a lot of things that she didn't know. And I guess she maybe felt like she needed to kind of learn about all these things a bit more, but eventually she realized that she's really good at like setting strategy, operating a business. And so those are the things she started to focus on, and she started to put more trust in her employees and let them kind of do their thing that they're experts at. I thought this was a pretty important leadership lesson because I think generally speaking and kind of intuitively, people want to turn their weaknesses into strengths or actually make them kind of disappear. But you have to kind of just accept overall that you're an imperfect human being. I am too, like everyone is, right? And everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. And over time, what I've seen by speaking with a lot of people who are kind of in the later stages of their careers, it always seems like people who do really well tend to kind of specialize in certain kind of strengths that they have and really capitalize on them. And for your weaknesses, my general philosophy about them is that whatever a person's strength is, it can come with a certain kind of weakness. So for example, you might be super, super detail oriented and you may be great at focusing on the details, right? But that comes maybe at the cost of not looking at things big picture. And if you enjoy the details and going into them, then that's what you should lean into and surround yourself with teammates who are able to fill in the gaps that you have. The last company is eMart, which is the oldest and largest retailer in Korea. And they have a large number of 7-Eleven type stores and large markets. And as a fun fact, it actually acquired Walmart Korea in 2006. The fifth and last lesson I wanted to share with all of you is that your job as a leader is to give energy and take away stress. The eMart CEO mentioned that whenever his teams meet with him, he's really cognizant of the fact that they had been probably working for weeks and weeks or months and months and put in a lot of time and energy and effort in order to create these presentations for these meetings, right? And so any kind of one-off discouraging type of comment that he might make, even if it's, well-deserved, even if that constructive criticism is really, really well-deserved, it really needs to be put in the right way, because if you don't have the kind of emotional intelligence or awareness in a particular situation and you kind of just make whatever comments you want, it can really, really hurt the team's morale. And so I really liked how he put his leadership philosophy of taking away stress from employees and giving them energy. I think whether it's positive reinforcement or just being aware of how to give feedback in a constructive way that doesn't really feel personal or is something where you restrain any kind of negative energy that you're giving off, but instead doing it for the betterment of the company or for that person's career. I think thinking about being a leader in that way will actually, it might require a little bit more effort up front, but it'll lead to a lot less damage in the future. And in the long run, it'll help you become a better leader because you will show that you care about your employees or your teammates, and that eventually will lead to a much stronger organization. So those were the 5 lessons that I took away from the Wharton alumni I spoke with. I hope they were all interesting and helpful to you. And let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. Wanted to also give you guys a friendly reminder to check out Wall Street Prep if you're interested in a career in finance, and also to sign up for my upcoming MBA course, giving huge discounts for people who sign up early. With that said, thank you all so much for watching. Hope to catch you all in the next video. Thanks so much and peace out.